Now I'm going to make the nut. I'm going to use a piece of ebony for the nut. Usually on instruments with steel strings especially, I'll use bone for the nut because it lasts a lot longer, and steel strings can dig into the slots, and over time you get some fret buzz at the first fret. However, with ukuleles and their nylon strings, that's not really a concern. So I like the look of ebony, just that continuation of the dark fretboard, and there's really no reason to not use ebony for the nut. It's more economical because I have all kinds of scraps of ebony, and I just like the way it looks, so that's what I'm going to use. I will use bone when I get ready to make the saddle. This is just a bone blank that I get from a supplier. It's a little tighter than the slot, so I'll have to sand it down a little bit, but that'll be the plan with that. And the reason I use bone for the saddle instead of ebony is I have this feeling that I get better transmission of sound vibration. I feel like there's a chance of losing some of the string vibration in the wood if you've got an ebony saddle. I don't know if that's actually the case or not, but bone being more dense, I think it makes sense that the transmission of vibration would be much more immediate and less dampened by the material itself. So that's why I'll use bone here. We've got the ebony nut blank fitting nicely, but it's really hard to see pencil lines that I'm going to make for telling me where to cut the nut slots, because the pencil doesn't show up on ebony very well. So what I'm going to do is put a little bit of white paint on here, and then when the paint dries, I'll be able to mark and actually see where I need to cut the nut slots. While that dries, I will sand down the saddle blank, get that to fit right into the slot there. There we go. It's a nice snug fit, maybe a little snugger than I want it to be, but not much. Because again, it's the big concern is transfer of the string vibration to the soundboard, and if you have a loose fitting saddle, it's going to kind of flop around as the string vibrates, and then of course there's less energy transferred to the soundboard. So I want a fairly snug fit. See, I can lift up the whole instrument, well, the body anyway, just by grabbing the saddle, but it's not so tight that I have to force it to go into the slot. I trimmed the saddle blank to roughly the right length, and now I'm measuring to figure out how much to lower it. I want the action at the 12th fret to be just a little over 3/32 of an inch on all strings. So what I'm looking at right now, if I was to string up this instrument, the height at the 12th fret would be 5/32. And that's true on the bass side as well as the treble side. So it's 2/32 of an inch too high, which means I have to lower the saddle twice that amount. So I have to take 4/32 or an eighth of an inch off of the top of the saddle, and that'll bring my strings pretty close to the desired height. Close enough for the initial stringing up anyway. So I will mark this eighth of an inch. And sand that off, then have another look. Okay, that's going to get me pretty close. I don't try to get right on the mark when I first string up an instrument, because there are always some concerns, or I at least have to allow for the fact that there might be some settling that is going to happen. So for now, that saddle is close enough. After I've strung up and let the uke sit for a day or two, I'll make some final adjustments to the height just to make sure I've got the action right where I want it. I'm going to use geared tuners on this instrument. I used to always use friction pegs on smaller ukuleles like the Sopranos, but I got feedback from a few customers that they really didn't like the friction pegs that much. Had a hard time getting them to not slip, and this was different brands too, not all the same ones. So lately I've been putting friction pegs on instead. There's a little bit of lacquer buildup on the peghead surface, so these ferrules won't fit in as is. So I'm going to have to just make the holes a little bit bigger. Well, actually just remove the lacquer buildup. There's always a risk of chipping the lacquer when I do that, so I'm going to soften it a little bit very carefully with a heat gun, and then I use a drill bit in reverse. I don't even put it on a drill, I'll just spin it in my fingers, and that'll remove the buildup. Almost there. Anyway, that's the idea.